Welcome back. All right, today's video is really cool. We're going to talk about miscommunications. Have you ever made a mistake and you just beat yourself up a little too much? Well, we're going to talk about why you shouldn't do that. And like and subscribe, comment below. When you share an awkward experience or a communication mishap you've had with other people, not only do you help the world, but other people can relate to that. And we realize we are a lot more similar than we think. And by doing that, we can help each other understand that we're not alone on this earth and we're all facing similar situations. Question for you. After a mess up, why should you be kind to yourself? So when I say a mess up, what I'm talking about is you meet someone maybe for the first time. You say something and it doesn't feel quite right. You feel like it's just a little awkward, a little incorrect. Maybe you made a social mistake and you didn't really understand why. You walk away, you come back to your mental state and you think about the situation as you're driving in your car, you're walking away, and you realize, man, I should have said that, or darn, I wish I had said this differently. Okay, so the thing is, you really shouldn't focus on that too much. Learn from it. That's a good thing. It's always good to learn. That's how we improve. But to beat yourself up and kick yourself, it's emotionally, it's not really the best idea. So, number one, life is extremely hard. It's difficult, even for those who are living well. All right. So, every day we have thousands of unscripted events. So, the reason you don't want to beat yourself up too much is it's not that you're a bad communicator necessarily. It's just that this is a completely new situation and you have all the life stress that we've talked about in previous videos that are weighing you down. So, when you have all these things taking place, it's not easy to always say the correct thing. Think about Hollywood. The reason we like TV and movies, a lot of times the words are just beautifully paired, and if it's a good writer, things just seem to flow perfectly. Well, sometimes that sets our expectation for real life to be glamorous and perfect, but real life isn't perfect. So we have to understand that real life, it's not going to be like Hollywood. So if you look at that picture, you have someone looking at all these different directions. Well, when you're in a conversation, you're thinking to yourself, what am I going to write? But you're doing it within a split second. So it's not like you have time to revise and go over and contemplate. You're doing it literally instantly. So that's another reason why to be more forgiving to people who are, say if they're politicians or leaders or parents or even yourself or children or whoever, when they're being asked a question or something, maybe the words don't come out the way they want them to. And unfortunately, we have a society that profits literally from advertising money by making fun of people or ridiculing them or insulting them or taking something completely out of context because they know it's going to get clicks or eyeballs. And then when someone finds out kind of the truth, they realize it was clickbait and they were just being used. But the problem is, if people keep clicking on that clickbait, well, that keeps bringing in revenue for these monsters, basically these people who profit from other people's mishaps. So the point is, we don't want to describe ourselves like that. We don't want to be the monster, but we also understand, forgive yourself, all right? Even if people are making fun of you or insulting you, don't worry about that, because first off, they're not good people, whoever do that, and they're jerks, they're rude. You don't need their validation or their opinion. Shouldn't matter very much, okay? So over time, the more we function in society, if you're continuing to improve, it's good to reflect, but just don't beat yourself up about it. Over time, we're going to learn how to better maneuver social settings, right? So some of us learn better than others, and this is true. There's some people you've met and you believe they are just amazing at communicating, and socially they might have more intelligence than you, right? And that's true. So we can learn from them and you can study them. But the thing is, just remember, you're you, they're them. Okay, so life is not fair. Life is full of people who have different advantages than others. So just do the best you can. You may not ever be on their level, but you just do the best you can. All right. So I like this picture that I put in the very bottom right. If you see, there's two people speaking, and it looks like a puzzle piece is clicking. So when you hear people say, wow, it's like we just clicked. Okay, what they really mean is my reference points, my personality, my humor, my information, whatever I was sharing, they completely, or at least it felt like they completely understood where I was coming from. they resonated with me. They liked where I was coming from. They agreed with me. They jived with me. So when you meet someone you click with or someone you really like, it's difficult because they're rare because you have to have so many similar things in common, right? So I want you to think about that in the sense that you will likely not click with most people, and that is a good thing because it means you're unique, right? So there's something about you that is only going to register with certain people with similar backgrounds, similar interests, and you need to be compatible in some ways. So the reason that's kind of nice is it gives you a break. You don't have to beat yourself up if you don't click with everyone because you don't match with everyone. We're all puzzle pieces and we don't all match. So instead of focusing on clicking or matching, that's where listening skills come in and where you can actually be a better listener and make them feel listened to. And even if you don't necessarily agree with them or like everything they like, you can still learn from them and they'll feel like they're clicking with you based on how you listen to them. If you're warm, if you have empathy, if you're a good responder. So, number 5, we all have had awkward social interactions or faux pas, right? So, where we walk away, we feel uncomfortable, and internally we just kind of keep kicking ourselves, right? And that's not the best way to live our life. Because I explained to you, we have so many unscripted events, you're never going to be perfect. So, the best you can do is improve from that social setting and remember the next time. So when you think like, man, you want to smack your head and say, oops, scream at the wall or whatever, just remember this is a journey and no one on earth will ever be able to communicate perfectly with each other unless, maybe there's some improvement in technology and biohacking, Elon Musk or something where we can figure out a way to communicate our thoughts instantly to someone else. But for the most part, we have to learn to be patient, to forgive ourselves when we make mistakes, and also to be kind to other people. And the mistakes I'm talking about are little mistakes. These aren't like huge mistakes where you say something horrible or mean. I'm talking about where you just miss social cues, or like you didn't say a joke correctly, or the joke could have been funnier, or maybe it wasn't appropriate. You didn't know that person that well. And we're going to talk about that a little more. The number one reason why there will never be a perfect communicator is because people are extremely complicated. So if you hear someone say, well, it's easy, or it's not that hard, that's not accurate because there's so much going into conversation that it's actually quite complicated and difficult. It just might feel easy if you're with someone who you already understand a lot of their syntaxes and their social beliefs and their values. So number 7, we keep thinking of what we could have said right or better. Have you ever done that? You see a cute girl you like or a cute guy you like, and you go up to them and you say something and it didn't come across the way you wanted it to. You finally got the nerve up to say hello to someone, and you introduce yourself and you fumble over your words, and then you're beating yourself up. Why did I say that? Why did I say that? That's so awkward. So here's the reason. Strangers are the most difficult people to interact with. So when you don't know someone very well, or if you've never met them ever, look at this picture. It shows like a picture of someone with, it looks like castles all in their head. Well, each person is a universe. And in their head, all these little castles represent so many different realms of thinking and thought and ideas and places that they have been and experiences that they have. You don't know what mysteries lie await in their mind, right, in their soul. So when you first meet someone, it's especially important not to beat yourself up because you haven't learned enough about them. So you can't really judge all that. That's why it's so important, and it's one of the best things you can do is to not presuppose they think or feel the same way like you do. So to be very careful in things that are basically inappropriate if you don't know someone about political views or certain things because you may make a mistake. Now, I like this picture of people doing complicated math. When you're dealing with people, communication, it's much more complicated than mere words. It's the idea of you're trying to compute this idea, this picture, this feeling to someone else on top of all the distractions around us, and most of the time, their brain doesn't even receive what you're saying it correctly. So the reason being, for strangers, you don't know them, you don't know what they think, you don't know what their humor is. Now this is a really important one. Humor requires a lot of intelligence, okay? So I have to ask you, do you think everyone is intelligent enough to understand deep humor? Do they have the same reference points? So deep humor may not make sense to a lot of people. The more complicated something is, the harder it is to understand the humor. So the reason you got to be really careful with jokes and humor is a lot of people will not get it. So if you're speaking to a large group of people, just accept the fact that there is a majority of people, or there's a minority of people who will not understand certain humor. But you also have to understand what their values and culture are, so you don't cross the line if you're trying to stay on friendly terms with them. So when we talk about intelligence, there's intelligent, like the quotient, intelligent quotient, the IQ, and then there's emotional intelligence. And when you combine those two, that's when you have really good results, when you have really good IQ and EQ. But the truth is, it's actually more likely better to have better emotional intelligence than necessarily simply IQ. And I can attest to that. I used to work at a microchip company, and I would see some of these engineers who had horrible people skills. They were extremely awkward, even walking past them to get coffee or go to the break room. I remember looking at them. They would just stare at you in a weird way and then look away, kind of creepy. And they had no common sense of how to carry themselves. Their clothes were just terribly mismatched and disheveled. And one of the big arguments I remember hearing, I would hear in the trainings and the briefing rooms, is a lot of the engineers couldn't get along with other engineers. They didn't know how to express frustration or fears about deadlines that they couldn't necessarily maybe guarantee, and they just wouldn't say anything. And then the deadline would come and it wouldn't be ready, and they said that they would do it, but they didn't, and they didn't know how to deal with confrontation. And I remember thinking, it doesn't matter how intelligent you are, your emotional intelligence needs to be up there. It needs to be high if you want to maintain any credibility or financial stability, because I saw some really intelligent people get fired over time because they made the company lose money by not being able to deliver on the next microchip product and the next advanced goal that they had. So the reason you want to have both is, if you're just emotionally intelligent but you don't have any IQ, you might be really good with people but have no skills. You don't know what to do with that intelligence. So it's good to work on both. So this is a really nice picture. If you look up here, it says there's two people, and someone says tree, and then the other person says tree. All right, well, here's something you got to think about when you're speaking to someone. They may not understand a social cue or something that you have in your social database. So we all have databases in our minds, and that's a really interesting concept, because when you say tree, that person might be thinking a Christmas tree. If you say tree, person might be thinking an orange tree. That person might be thinking of a palm tree. They might be thinking of an apple tree. And you might have been thinking of a cherry tree. So when we're not specific, we can use words that are not very clear, or they send the wrong message to someone. So depending on their background and what's important to them, they may misunderstand something quite easily. And that's why we want to be really careful when we're first dealing with people. It takes time. There's layers before you get to know them, because little words that wouldn't make you upset might trigger them or offend them because of their insecurities or their lack of social database that you have. So I love this picture in the bottom right, that it's like this massive volume of books in a library. Well, every person is a massive volume. It's a huge library. Now, smart people, when we say someone's more educated, more intelligent, they have way more books in their library. All right, so we all have a big library just from memories and experiences. But smart people, their books might be more interesting to read, might be more difficult to read. They might be more specific for a certain category, right? Someone can be a really smart aerospace engineer, but really dumb when it comes to how to paint or how to create a sculpture, right? So it doesn't mean that they're dumb as a person. They're just low intelligence in that category. So when we're talking to people, we have to understand what our words and our reference points and our jargon mean to them. So going back to everything that I talked about, the reason I told you I don't want you to beat yourself up is because everyone is completely complicated. There's no such thing as an open book. It's a very it might be deceptive to believe that people are open books, but really it takes time to get to know people. And so when you say you click with someone, as I said before, what you're really saying is we have a lot of the same societal database connections. We have a lot of the same humor, which is we have the similar reference points for the humor. So if you make fun of a movie that was from the 80s or 90s or a reference point, and the person was born in, the 1990s or year 2000, right? They're not going to understand the humor. So we have to also understand the maturity of the person. So the reason I created this video is because I think there's a lot of people who beat themselves up way too much and they don't realize, you know what, learn from your little social faux pas and your mistakes, but don't beat yourself up for it. We're all going through this journey and we're all going to make little mistakes along the way. But the good thing is what you can take away from this video is you're okay. You're a good person. It's normal. It happens. Don't try to mess up conversations on purpose, but don't beat yourself up if it didn't go quite the way you want. And here's a trick. If you're really unsure and you don't know someone that well, purposely stick to topics that are kind of boring. You can be polite about it, but things that really don't create a lot of drama until you get to know them better and let them open up. Because you don't want to be the person that lights the match to some bomb emotionally that makes them upset and then they blame you or they criticize you, or it could be a customer or someone you don't know, and they judge you too quickly. They don't really know who you are, and you just make your life a lot harder that way. There's certain people who are just terrible people, and they're emotional babies. They don't have any maturity, and they're looking for some person to basically paint them as a victim. Some people just love that, playing that role. And if you remember the 3 states of communication, the child, the parent, the adult, we want to stay in the adult state, and there's a lot of people who want to stay in the baby state. They want people to cradle them, and they're looking for someone to basically give them an excuse to play victim. They like attention on social media, and there's a lot of negative that comes from that. So you can guard yourself emotionally and protect yourself simply by being a little vanilla, a little boring in the beginning until you get to know someone. And then that way you can open up more when you realize maybe they're more similar to you, or maybe their ideas on politics or anything that's emotional, is extremely opposite of yours, and you go, ooh, good thing I didn't say what I really thought, because this person's way too immature to handle that, or we don't have anything in common. There's no reason to discuss it. So think about that. You're a good person. It's okay. Life happens. And don't kick yourself when you make a social faux pas. Just learn from it, and don't let it bother you too much. Just learn from it and go on and make it better next time. All right, quick reminder. Remember, I have a really cool recorded message you can always call. It's a 1-424-394-1818. It's Beverly Hills area code, California number. And you can call this and get 60 to 90 seconds. You're going to have some really quick positive advice. And I update it every Monday. So save it on your phone, your star list. You can call it multiple times, and it's really encouraging when you're just kind of driving and you want to feel some encouragement. Just give this number a call, and if you like what it is, or if there's something you want me to talk about or something you're challenged, you can leave a voicemail, and I can incorporate that into future videos. This is one of the most fun parts of the whole video, and that is the conversation starter question. So here it is, all right? If you could take one person with you to the year 3000 for 24 hours, who would you take with you and why? So remember this question. You can ask your friends when you get off, when you finish watching this video. You can ask your friends, your mom, your brother, anyone who you want to ask this question to. And it's interesting to hear their response. So if you could take one person with you to the year 3000 for 24 hours, who would you take and why? So remember, cool questions lead to better conversations. So subscribe and leave a comment below, something that would be interesting for you. For me personally, I would either take my fiance or my best friend, because I'd have to think about if it's dangerous. Would I be worried about if there's like some nuclear fallout, if we had some horrible problem? I'm assuming that's probably not going to happen. But I'd still want someone who could like move around, maneuver, think strategically, because we don't know what we're walking into. But it would be really fascinating to see the technology and the advancements of everything. So it would be really exciting to see what happened, just out of curiosity. What exactly happened in the year 3000? So everybody, I love you, appreciate you, and you watching this individual, I appreciate you. Thank you, and subscribe. Comment below what your who would you take? Who's your one person that you take to the year 3000? And what would you do and why? All right, comment below. It'd be really nice to hear your response.